It's cool. I mean, these always kind of weird me out, the fact that anyone cares enough to like come up and ask questions or want something signed.
Care.
No, but then I realized like I am the exact same way. Like I geek out when you realize Doug Bradley is sitting two things over. I mean, I grew up on fucking Pinhead or Derek Mears or Bill Moseley. So then I just turned into like a horror geek myself. And yeah. I grew up, my dad, when I was a kid, when Blockbuster was a thing, I remember like my thing was every Friday night going to Blockbuster with my dad and picking out horror movies. And that was like, you know, and it's not like today where like you go on Netflix and I usually give up after like page 5, I just get overwhelmed. But it's crazy because a lot of those, I mean, I've seen a lot of the VHSs out there, but then realizing a lot of the people that I grew up watching, I've got to meet at these conventions, which is, again, I stopped thinking of myself at that point as a filmmaker and just like a giddy fan. I met Elvira once, and I literally was the most awkward, like nerdish. I think there's a restraining order on me now. To me, the reason I love horror so much is I was never, you know, I'm probably the classic cliche. I was bad at school. I was bad at sports. And growing up, my heroes were, you know, my friends were like Pete Rose or, you know, whatever. And I'm like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, Cannibal Holocaust. You know, so my dad basically let me start watching when I wanted to, like around 9 or 10. So I can remember when Freddy's Nightmares were a thing, when that TV series came on, like I would sneak downstairs and watch it with the volume really low, hoping they wouldn't hear it. I remember that I went in my brother's room when I was like 10, and I found a VHS copy of Cannibal Holocaust, which I regret considerably because it was the one without all the edited animal violence taken out. I remember watching that, and the feeling of being sickened and disgusted and horrified stuck with me. And I think that horror has the ability to imprint itself on you, where comedies or dramas don't. Like, I like Weekend at Bernie's, but I couldn't remember anything about it outside of there's a dead guy who gets moved around. But I can tell you the first time I saw Nightmare on Elm Street or The Exorcist, because it left an imprint on me, an impression on me. And I think that horror has the ability to do that. So it's just been something I've always gravitated to. Yeah, you know, the thing I like about my career is I've done such weird shit that I probably should have been like never allowed to make a movie again, because I went from making 3 very successful horror films to going to do a rock opera with Paris Hilton, to then going to do a Japanese TV series all in Japanese, to doing like The Barons, to then going, and I just got back from the Middle East, I shot an Arabic horror film. And then I did, have you guys ever seen the movie The Game, the Michael Douglas movie, David Fincher? Yeah. I do that. That's my side hustle, and it's becoming my full-time hustle. I do that in real life. I have a company that puts together extreme immersive events where we fuck with your life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's intense. We basically put you in the middle of a horror movie that you have to sign these insane legal agreements, and we show up to your house, your office, we involve your family. We have off-duty police officers. There's shootouts in streets. And so, you know, jumping from doing that to then I was about to direct a Broadway play when I got offered Spiral, which was crazy because I took a hiatus for like 3 years of making movies. I was just kind of over it. I just like doing different things that are dangerous. And so for me, you know, I wanted to go to Broadway and do a horror show on Broadway. And I was literally in the theater with the producers, and my phone rings, and it's Mark Berg, who is the producer of the Saw films. And he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in New York." And he says, "You need to come to LA." And I said, "I'm coming to LA." And he goes, "You're meeting with Chris Rock tomorrow." And I was like, "I'm on my way to LA." And so I had to put the Broadway thing on hold and flew in to meet Chris Rock, and now I went back and did that. So it's cool that I've been able to ping pong around doing such just insane things. I want to do a Hallmark movie, like those Lifetime Christmas movies, but I want them to let me do like my version of one of those, and I just want to enrage and piss everyone off. That's just my entire goal in life. So,
same.
Yeah. So no, I don't know if I could really do something. You know, I'm really into people as horror fans. We always say we want something new, we want something original, we want something different. Until that comes around, and then a lot of times people shy away from it, and they because we like comfort food. We like the Starbucks, even though Starbucks doesn't have the best coffee. I really think that there needs to be a change, which which was kind of like, it started me in this immersive thing, to make movies more immersive, make content more immersive. And what I mean by that is, Steven Soderbergh did it a little bit on this, I think it was HBO that put it out, where basically the audience is able to manipulate the narrative how they see fit. And that's what got me into doing Tension, which is the game thing, is that basically, we're addicted to our phones, we're addicted to Instagram, we're addicted to, Twitter. We're never present. We're always these, even when we're watching a movie at home, we're doing 10 other things. And so to capitalize on that and make the content you're putting out there, the audience have a different way to interact with it. And that's what started me doing this Tension experience, which is that kind of immersive thing in LA. I want to bring that into movies and bring that into, and I'm not talking choose your own adventure. It just as a way to basically connect with the audience and make them feel more connected to the material. So that's what, hopefully I'll be doing next after all this.
Now tell me, with this Tension thing, how long do these events last for the participant?
The first year we did it, it was 12 months. Basically, we opened up. It was such a cool story, and it's a shame that more people don't know about it, because it's the thing I'm probably, as an artist, most excited about. Basically, we created a website, and the website looked like it was just weird quotes from Anton LaVey, or just different serial killers, or people that had been criminals, and it was weird, and it didn't say what it was, it didn't tell you anything about it. But if you knew enough to look at the source code on the website, if you actually went in and looked at the source code, buried in the source code was a cell phone number, and it said, "Help me, please call." And so we had an actor that for 3 days straight answered the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for those, for that time frame. And if you answered, she gave you an address, and she would say, "Go there now." And then we had actors waiting at this warehouse, off-duty police officers, cameras everywhere, and basically you were presented with an application to fill out. And then I think maybe 10,000 people in total called the number, and then we accepted 500 people, 300 to 500 people of that, and then we vetted those people out to find out if we thought they were risks, if whatever, and then they were emailed basically a waiver to say you can participate in this event. Here's a safe word, here's a way to stop it if it gets too intense. And then we did it for those people over the course of a year, and it took place all around Los Angeles. And then we ended it in September. So from September to November, we opened up a 60,000 square foot warehouse that anyone can buy a ticket for. And it lasted 3 hours. That part of it lasted 3 hours. We had 70 actors. And it's not a haunted house. There was no jump scares. No one wore masks and jumped out at you. It was like Westworld. You basically walked in, and however you decided to interact would dictate where you went. And I did that for 4 years in a row. We did that one called Tension. We did one called Lust, which if you guys have seen Eyes Wide Shut, you basically get an invitation to a sex party. And it was intense. I mean, full, probably today I would have been canceled for doing it, but it was a full-on, you walk into a sex party and there's a murder, and you have to try to figure out who did it. And you're going through all of these different rooms, interacting with people. And then we've done it every year since. Every other year or so, we've done a big immersive thing. There is literally no way to describe it. Sarah, are you in here? So Sarah went to one of them. I don't know how to describe
all of that.
Yeah, I mean, they're no way to. I'll say this, you're not going to believe it, and you're going to think that it's tears. I mean, people walk out crying because it's not scary. We're not scaring you. We're making you do really, I'll give you an example of one of the things. So one of the things are, you get brought into a room and there's strobe lights going off, and the whole room is painted dark red. And you're basically, one of the first things we do when you get to the experience is you get pushed into a room and you're told to strip down and put on a jumpsuit, because I want to remove your clothes, because I don't want you to hide behind your Versace bullshit or your Rolex watches or whatever. So everyone is forced to wear the same thing. So we're all on a level playing field. So immediately what that does is, you can't hide behind this superficial thing.
And your security blanket. Yeah.
And we take your cell phones, we take your watches, so there's no way you can communicate with the outside world. So now you're pushed through, and you're put into a room where you're forced to basically stand with a stranger. And you're supposed to, one of the questions you get asked is, standing across from you as a person, tell the person in front of you what you would do with them alone for 60 seconds. Tell the person what you don't like about their appearance. So they're very personal things you're sharing. And it breaks people down, because we're not used to that. We're not used to being present. I mean, I went to a bar the other day, and it was kind of disgusting. It was like everyone was on their cell phones, on Tinder, and all this other shit. And there's beautiful people on both the right and left of you, but it's a security thing. We feel safer on our phones than we do, whatever. So I think that these experiences force you to be present. So it's, for me, I just love it because it's not passive entertainment. You go see Spiral, it's passive. You're sitting at a screen, you're watching it. When you go to immersive, you're forced to interact, you're forced to talk, you're forced to have human interaction. And I think that's become lost with this age of technology. And now it's cool, we've actually been hired to do private events. So we did like Neil Patrick Harris's birthday party. So his husband called us and said, you have 48 hours, we want to put this thing together. So for 48 hours, Neil had no idea who was in on it and who wasn't. And we had 60 plus actors that were interacting with him, and it was awesome. Like, he went to the gym, and I hired like 30 actors to go to Equinox and surround him, and he had no idea. And so like they're all on the treadmill next to Neil, and then at the exact moment, like they all turn and look at Neil at the same time. My favorite was we had it where he got a massage that afternoon. And when he's face down, we changed the masseuse out. He didn't know it. So he's getting this massage, and the masseuse, he turns over, and it's just huge dude. And he hands him a card, and it said, you have 30 minutes to get to this address. Your family's in danger. And so, like, it's just this crazy real world scavenger hunt. So when I'm not directing, then I'm doing that.
No, I gotta know, piggybacking off of that, have you been to the Saw escape room in Vegas?
I did.
How is it? Because I haven't been, want to go. In your opinion, how is it?
It's great. Well, I'm very biased because it's mainly Saw 2, 3, and 4 traps, so they did it on those 3.
And it was like realistic. It was really fun.
Yeah, it definitely. I'm terrible at anything like that. I'm terrible at escape rooms.
Oh, me too. I never escape.
Yeah. So the guy actually came out and shook his head. She said, "You're a disappointment." I was like, "Thank you." I hear that a lot from my wife. No, so it was really cool though. I mean, they put a lot of detail into it, and it, there's an authenticity. Just got Tobin's voice. A lot of times I've been to Saw haunted houses, and it's like really shitty puppets that look nothing like the real doll and bad Tobin impersonations. They went the extra mile on this for sure.
Now, you talked that you were in the process of doing horror on Broadway when Spiral came about. Did you ever get that chance to do your Broadway horror? You still want to do it? Is it still going to happen someday? Do we know?
No. I actually I definitely made the right choice because that show that I was going to direct was shut down by the pandemic. So when I did Spiral, it was right before the pandemic hit. And so that entire production closed down. So I ended up making the right choice. But I will definitely do something this year on Halloween. So if you guys are ever in Los Angeles, I highly recommend Follow the Tension Experience. We will definitely do a horror-based, because I went and saw a show a couple weeks ago called 222 in LA, and it's a ghost story horror show. And it's just not scary. It's just, I want to do something live that has the same kind of scares that you would see, at a movie. And I think that, look at Terrifier 2. That is balls to the wall, 2.5 hour gore fest, just ridiculousness. I want to do that live with people. And there's been a couple. I think there was an Evil Dead one that I saw that had like the kind of gross out stuff. But I want to do the gross out with the actual scares and I'm really into magic. So using like real life magic techniques, things like that. So things are happening around you, not just at you. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I have a very insane path that, again, would get me canceled, fired, or blackballed from Hollywood. So I'll tell it to you, it would never work today. But I do like my story, and I think that what's cool about, the entertainment industry is you have to be creative if you want to make it. I'm not talented. I guarantee 90% of you are better filmmakers than I am. The difference is that I had the creativity and tenacity to get back up after being knocked down 100 times. I went to film school with people that were a million times better filmmakers than I were, better writers. But getting to LA is like being kicked in the balls repeatedly, and it hurts. So I think a lot of these people get kicked in the balls 80 times, and they're like, fuck that, I'm out. And I guess I'm a masochist, and I like getting kicked in the balls. And so that 99th time becomes Saw 2. For me, I lied. That's how I did it. I lied, I manipulated, and then I made it true. So I was in LA, and I've told this story a bunch, so I'll give you the quick version, but I was in LA. I directed some really bad short films, really terrible. And I thought that they were awesome, and I thought that, I was gonna walk in there and I was gonna have the keys to Hollywood. And you're smacked down to reality that you're not special. Everyone in Hollywood wants to be an actor, a producer, a writer. So I get a PA job, and I was bad at it because I was bitter. So my first job was X-Files. I was in the final season of X-Files, and I got fired. It was when Robert Patrick was on it, and he fired me himself because I fell asleep when I was supposed to be locking down a set. And when you lock down a set, my job is to make sure no one walks into the set. I was taking a nap, and a homeless guy walked in and stood there, and Robert Patrick's like, "Who's supposed to be locking down this set?" And there's me in the corner, snoozing. And so I got fired very abrasively there. And then my next job was on a movie called Van Wilder. I was Tara Reid's assistant, and I got fired from that. She refused to learn my name. She called me Devin, Daryl, Derek, and I was like, "It's fucking Darren. It's not hard to say." And then I got fired. And just time after time I was getting fired, and I was getting more and more angry and desperate. My money was running out. And I started writing a script called The Desperate, and it was like a very exaggerated version about what I would do out of my desperation. And so I wrote this movie about these people in a house, and each one of the people were desperate, and they willingly participated in this event. And when I was writing it, I'd never written anything before. I didn't really know how to finish the script. But at this point, I started working in an agency as an assistant. And I realized that assistants control Hollywood, not the producers, not the agents, it's the assistants, because we are the front line to get to anyone. So an assistant gets a script and they read it, and if they like it, they then give it to the agent or manager. So I was like, you know what, I'm in a position now where I actually control things. So I wrote fake coverage on my script. Coverage is what you write to give to your agent, to say, hey, read this, here's 3 pages of what it is. So I wrote fake coverage on my script, The Desperate, and I said, oh my God, the script's fucking amazing, this writer's insane. And I called a couple of friends at other agencies and said, do me a favor, help me get this thing sold. And so I made up a fake agent and management company for myself with a fake voicemail. And I changed the title page on the script to have a fake name, James Luther. And this coverage entered the studio system. And a bidding war started on The Desperate before I even finished it. And I remember I got a phone call from Twisted Pictures and said, we've heard about this script called The Desperate, we'd really like to read it. And I was like, holy shit, I haven't finished this thing. So that gave me the motivation to finish the script. And so I finished the script, it gets to Twisted Pictures, they love it, which is awesome, that fake it till you make it. And then they wanted to make it as its own movie called The Desperate. And so for about 2 months, we were in prep for The Desperate. It was going to be made for $1 million. At the same time, Saw was at Sundance, and Saw was killing at Sundance. So Lionsgate called them and said, we need to make a sequel like now. We don't have time to develop it, we need to do this. And my script had a lot of similarities. It was contained, it was in a house, there was a huge twist at the end. If you've seen Saw 2, spoiler alert, it's not live, and the kids, that was all in the original script. So they hired me to rewrite The Desperate to become Saw 2. Now here's my second lie, that I had to go meet with Lionsgate, and I made a proclamation that I would not give them the script unless I could direct it. And so here I am, 24 years old, sitting at Lionsgate with this board of executives, and they said, you know, why in the world would we ever let you direct this? Have you ever directed anything? And I said, yes, my short films have won every festival. And they said, so you directed short films? And I said, I've directed many horror short films. And this guy, Pete Block, goes, great, we need to see one of these horror short films. Oh. So I called my parents, this was on a Thursday, and I called my parents, and I was like, guys, I need money now. And they're like, what the fuck? And I was like, just please. So my parents send $10,000 to me, they wire $10,000, and I go out and I rent a camera and a grip truck. And this is the best part, we shot it on Friday, but this was film, we shot it on Super 16. Me, not knowing shit about filmmaking, accidentally exposed the film and ruined it. So we had to reshoot it that next day. So now it's on Sunday. We shoot this 3-minute short film in my office. And that short film is on Saw 2. You can actually see it on there. And I quickly edit it together, and I drop it off at Lionsgate and tell them this is the one that's won all these awards. And I was on a plane 2 weeks later to Toronto. Yeah, so that was, and I have another one of those stories which is equally as fucked up and maybe even more brazen or ballsy. Is I worked at a place called The Firm, and they were a huge music management company. They represented every musical talent from Korn to the Dixie Chicks to and they represented actors and directors like Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio. I was a tape room operator, which meant my job was to dub videotapes. That's it. And one of my responsibilities was to sit in a music manager meeting every week and just hit play on the VCR. It was demoralizing because here I am, spent a ton of money at film school and I'm relegated to pressing play that they could fucking do, but that was my job. So one afternoon I was in a music management meeting, and one rule is I was not allowed to talk. They don't want to hear from me. Head of the music management company says, "What's going on with the Static X music video?" And the manager said, "The director just backed out." And they said, "Well, the album comes out next week. What are we going to do? That means there's going to be no video." And I stood up in that meeting. And it's like you hear in movies, like all the music stopped. Everyone looked at me, and I said, "I'll do it." And Jeff Quantin's the owner of the company, said, "Who are you?" And I remember my boss said, "He's no one. Don't listen to him." And the guy, Jeff Quantin, goes, "I want to see you in my office after this is over." And everyone thought I was going to get fired. I thought I was going to get fired. And so I go in his office, and he said, "So you want to do the music video?" And I said, "I own a grip truck. I own a camera truck. I own a camera. I can do it." And he goes, "Great, you have a week." I called my parents again. I did not have a grip truck or camera truck. And I got more money from my parents, and I got to direct this Static X music video, which was on Headbangers Ball the next week. And that led me to do a video for Korn and a bunch of other things. So I really just lied my way until it became true. So again, with the date and with the technology and internet now, it would never work now, but it worked then. So, yeah. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
Do we have any audience questions?
Hey, I was just interested to know how much information did you have about future scripts in the Saw franchise when you were actually filming the movies at that time? Yeah,
I was a huge proponent of creating things that we don't. So, Hollywood likes things contained in a nice box. They don't want to leave these big pondering questions. And I always would fight to put those big things out there, put threads out there that didn't make sense, knowing that if Saw 2 was successful, there would be a Saw 3 and a Saw 4 onwards. So there was a lot of ideas that we would throw out there with the intention of solving them later. Names, places, things in the background. So we would do that. I knew when I made Saw 3 what I wanted Saw 4 to be. I knew that I wanted to have the dual parallel storylines. So we did that. Coming back on Spiral, we came up with a multiple storyline idea, knowing that if Spiral, there's a sequel to it, we've already layered in with the first, through the first one. I can't answer that after Saw 4, but I know that every time we were in it, that was a huge discussion thing for us, is if there's another movie, what have we layered in these films that we can pay off? As opposed to trying to reverse engineer it later, like watching the movie saying, fuck, what can we pull out of this to put in there? So Saw 3 and 4 was developed to be what that was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember any alternate Saw traps that were conceptualized? Just never had them.
I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, honestly. It could be the alcohol. I don't know. No, there is a bunch of shit that in Spiral there was something filmed that we never put in the movie. For some reason, Spiral had the most fuckery within the edit of any of the Saw movies I did, where the NPA basically came in and I think because of Chris Rock and Samuel Jackson, there was they were more concerned that it was no longer a niche horror film, that it was going to have more mass appeal. So they were a lot harder on us. So we cut entire traps out of Spiral. In the other films, traps would always evolve. So what a trap started as is never what it became. So there are, I don't know if necessarily there were traps that were like made and not done, but there were traps that changed. One of my big issues on any of the Saw films that I did was I wanted the traps to work the way they say they work. Meaning we're not taking creative liberties in them. If something is shown to the audience, it has to work like that. Another thing that I really wanted to do was make them like magic tricks where we're not relying heavily on visual effects to do things, that they are actually doing the way that we're showing them. So like an example, on Spiral, the tongue trap, that was not what was written. We wrote it as fish hooks. And then we tried it with a mannequin, and the weight of a body would just rip the tongue out immediately or rip through the muscle. So we had to redesign it because I wanted to make sure that every trap is real the way that we show it on screen. So traps would evolve with mine to do that. Yeah.
Actually, I want to go back to Repo Man. How was it, and how long did it take to actually get that done?
Yeah, so one of my things that I think I excel at is my not give a fuck attitude and the just don't give up, because no one's going to believe in your vision more than you. So my job as a filmmaker is to become passionate about something and fight for it. So Repo was a 5 or 6 year fight for, it started as a stage show. So I directed a stage show in like 2001, maybe. I was 21 years old. That was a little stage show at a small little theater in Hollywood. And I directed it for like, I don't know, I think we ran for like 4 months, and it was a lot of what you see in the movie. And when I left, you know, I'd never directed a movie at that point. I told the two creators that if I ever make it as a filmmaker, I'm making this into a movie. And I think they kind of blew it off thinking, yeah, whatever. And then I did Saw 2, and Saw 2 opens #1, and Lionsgate comes to me and says, whatever movie you want to do, you can do. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to make this rock opera. And they said, fuck you, Saw 3. So then I do Saw 3, and they opens #1, and I make the Guinness Book of World Records on Saw 3. Now Lionsgate, for real, anything you want to do. And I said, Repo. They said, go fuck yourself, Saw 4. And then I said to them, I will do Saw 4 if I can do Repo in return. And finally I was able to get Repo made at that point. And then it was a huge battle, because when we made Repo, they wanted to put who was hot at that time. They wanted Avril Lavigne to be Shiloh. They wanted John Bon Jovi to be Repo Man. And my first, and literally the very first thing I said is I want Anthony Stewart Head to be Repo Man. I just watched Buffy's Once More with Feeling. His brother Murray Head was in one of my favorite albums, Jesus Christ Superstar, the original album. And I wanted Anthony Stewart Head. And so they absolutely wouldn't entertain that. We ended up casting Patrick Swayze, which is crazy. We have an entire album of Patrick Swayze that he recorded. He was great, by the way. And an off kind of weird story, I believe that I was with Patrick Swayze when he found out he was dying. It was such a weird thing. I meet him for the very first time. We're sitting there and his phone rings, and he goes, I got to take this, I'll be right back. And he walks away from me, and I'm watching him, and I just see tears start going down his face, and he starts punching the wall. And he says, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. And he walks back over to me, eyes red, and he's like, I'm so sorry, I have to leave. Cut to 2 hours later, I'm leaving this hotel, and he's on his motorcycle, just comatose almost. I was like, dude, are you okay? And he said, I'm not. And he was like, I'm not. And the next day he dropped out, and then it was released the next week that he had this condition. And then after that, they let me get Anthony Stewart Head. I only had one selection for Shiloh, and that was always Alexa Vega. So that was a huge battle. And honestly, I fought fucking hard for Paris. I loved her. I met with 30 different actresses for Amber Sweet, and she was the only one that came prepared. I'm shit you not. All the other people came like they didn't read the script or they didn't have anything prepared. Paris walks into the meeting with this note binder of like a tear sheet she did. She basically pitched me her vision for the character. She was giving me like minute details in the script. So like having to fight for her took forever. So yeah, it was a struggle, but again, it was something I believed in, and I think that the reason it is been embraced so much by fans is everyone that was involved in it. It was a passion project for them, and I think you can see that passion on the screen, from the wardrobe to the production design to the music.
Can I ask you about that project, also about working with the great Paul Sorvino?
Paul Sorvino, may he rest. Paul Sorvino and I hated each other when we first met, and it's actually a funny story. So, you know, Paul Sorvino is as intimidating as his Goodfellas persona. He's bigger than life. He comes in and he's just this big, he commands the room. And, you know, we were making this movie on very little time. And when you're doing a musical, you have choreography, you have lip syncing, you have all this, you know, shit you have to do. Paul and I immediately didn't get along. And on the first day, he walked off set because there was too much smoke in the air. And he goes, my voice is my instrument and I refuse. And he walked off set. And I was like, fuck this guy. I'm not going to be talked to like this. And the producer said, if Paul walks, this movie goes away. You better go fix that. And so I remember having to go to his trailer, and I knocked on his door. And as I knocked on the door, it was like I knocked on Snoop Dogg's door. This poof of smoke comes out. And like I'm having to waft it off. And it's Paul and like 3 of his dudes in there smoking cigars. And they literally just walked off set because there was too much smoke in the air. And so I was like, Paul, listen, I'm sorry, but I need you back out here. And he begrudgingly comes back out and finishes the day. And so when he leaves that next day, he calls the producers and he tried to quit. He's like, I don't want to do this movie. I fucking hate it. I don't like that director. and they talk him out of it. So the next day we shoot Gold, which is his big song on Repo, and I hated him. I was like, now I want him gone, and I was like, I can't handle this. He's got to go. So we make amends, and by the end of the shoot, like, not only do I like the guy, like, he's like a father figure. I want him to like me because I know he doesn't. So we edit the movie, and Paul Sorvino was the first one I called to watch it because I know he was going to be the toughest critic. So I fly to New York to show this movie to just Paul Sorvino. And I remember he was the only one in the theater, and he sits and watches this movie, and the movie ends, and he just sits there, and then I see him look over to me, and he's got his eyes have like water in them, and he stands up and he hugs me, and he goes, "I'm sorry," and he goes, "Anytime you call me, the answer is yes." And he said, I don't want to end my career being just the guy who chopped garlic, and meaning, you know, one of his most iconic things. And his passion is opera, and I think that he realized this was going to be something special. Now, from that moment on, Paul became one of my dearest friends for years. I would go to his house for pasta dinners, and I'll tell you, one of my favorite memories was maybe 2 years after Repo ended. Paul calls me up and says, "Let's go get a drink." And I was like, all right. No, Paul wanted to go to the club. So I go to Paul's house, and he's wearing like club attire, and I go to a club with Paul Sorvino, like a dance club with just Paul and I. And it was the most random, crazy, and then Paul and I did 2 other movies. After that, he came to my house with my family numerous times. I talked to Paul 2 weeks before he died. And so he ended up becoming one of my closest, you know, working actor friends. The guy's awesome.
Yeah, he was, and so very talented. I have owned his album for years, and he had the most beautiful voice. And we've talked about this on our show. I was a really big fan of a 3-year run show called That's Life that he co-starred on, and he sang a lot in that show too. And I just fell in love with his voice.
He is it's one of those things that, like, you know, that experience of making Repo, all of those people that we made with that movie, we're all still friends now, from Sarah Brightman to Anthony Head to Paul until he died. It was kind of like this weird summer camp that we were just living in this make-believe world doing, you know, crazy shit. But yeah, Paul was an amazing dude. Anyone that buys something from my table will do a really shitty magic trick for you. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they work. Like 20%. If I'm not that drunk, you're gonna. No. So my midlife crisis. I had 2 midlife crises: collecting garbage pail kids and doing magic. So I started going to the Magic Castle. So one of the things with this immersive experience that I do, we use magic a lot because we want people to feel like. We want to feel like they're in a movie, and so we don't want them to ever feel like there are visual effects going on around them. It looks real, like everything we're doing looks real, so I hired magicians. And then I became in that magic circle, and then I became friends with some of the most insane people in the magic world. In fact, I'm working right now on a show with Penn Jillette of Penn & Teller. I got to go backstage and meet Copperfield, and it's just like, next thing I knew, I'm surrounded in this, and I started just picking up, because if you're with these people, I want to know what they're talking about. So I started teaching myself tricks, and one of my unhealthy obsessions right now is I buy these really expensive magic tricks that have been built for me, and they're all horror-based. So I found this manufacturer so if you go to my house now, all around my office are things that look just like old archaic things, but they're all magic. So if someone says, "What is that weird fucking thing there?" I can turn that into a magic trick, because to me, if I have a deck of cards, you know you're about to see a magic trick, and you know he's gonna fucking lose a card.
Or play poker.
Or play poker. Or fuck the magic trick up, is usually what happens to me, but you know you're about to see a magic trick. Versus if you're in an office and you're like, "What is that weird thing?" It's more magical because I can do something with you're not expecting. So yes, I do love magic. Yes, I will do bad magic at my table when you any other questions from the audience? I'm talking a bunch of nonsense. Yeah.
When Spiral got delayed, like, what were those discussions like on what to do next?
Me crying in a bathtub full of scotch in my tears. You know, it sucks for me because Spiral is something I was insanely proud of, and I think that if the circumstances were different, it would have been a much different experience. But we finished Spiral, so I'm a huge conspiracy theorist. Aliens, any sort of Illuminati shit, I could talk for hours. I was, you know, I would say 20% of my day is on conspiratorial sites. So this is not an exaggeration. So I was reading about COVID months and months and months before it ever was mainstream news. And I was this is not an exaggeration, I was in Toronto and I was having N95 masks shipped back to my house. My wife was like, you're fucking crazy, there's no fucking virus. I remember her mom called me one day and said, when I was shooting Spiral, you were insane, stop this nonsense. My point to this is that as Spiral was going on and as we were mixing it, I'm like, guys, what are we gonna do about our release date? There's gonna be a pandemic. And I remember Mark Berg saying, fucking pandemic, do you hear yourself? Like they were saying that shit to me. Cut to, we literally got out of Toronto, and 1 week later they shut airspace down between Toronto and US, and then the film was delayed, whatever, I don't know how long it was, a year plus, but what sucked about it was, it's like, you get one chance to excite an audience. You show that original trailer, you build hype, you build momentum, and then you release the movie. Well, they started putting out posters and trailers and all this other shit, and then they're like, yeah, just joking, wait 19 more months. And then by the time they re-released everything, it felt like, well, wait, we've already seen that. We already have the novelty of Chris Rock and Sam Jackson. We get it. So it sucked. So I wasn't joking about the bathtub of vodka and scotch in my tears. It sucked because you're sitting on this movie that you're really proud of and you want people to see it. And then when it finally comes out, it feels like, wait, didn't you already see that trailer like a year plus ago? So it's, it sucked. It was awesome to do the movie, but no one wants to sit. But listen, there was bigger things going on in the world. There was a fucking global pandemic. So,
But I think also, the pandemic taught us a lot. It taught us that entertainment was very, very important. Because all we had all of a sudden was movies and TV shows and live streaming events.
Do you know what's funny? There was a medical thing put out, or a paper at the University of Chicago that said that horror fans were more easily adaptable to the pandemic than people that were not horror fans.
Because we know what to do.
Well, that's just it, is that we put ourselves in these situations and we think, what would we do in this situation? So, we've been preparing for the zombie apocalypse for I don't know how long, and it's happening, so.
It was literally like, I've been training for this my whole life. I'm ready.
I'm a recluse and I just sit in my house, so it didn't really affect me much. Not much changed in my life. I made a movie. You know what's crazy though? I made a movie. I have a new movie coming out. I'm really excited about, with Jeremy Irons and Tobin Bell. And we shot it in the Middle East, Prague, Italy, and Ireland during the pandemic, and we did not have a single case of COVID. Cut to, I come back home for 1 week and I catch it in LA. So not a single case on the movie, but then I get it when I come home. Yeah.
What's some of your favorite saw traps?
I think the simpler they are, the better they are for me. The needle pit, because it's so simplistic, it's just needles. You don't have to have an engineering degree, which Jigsaw did. But I think that one was great. I loved the box one that also from Saw 2, where Addison gets her hands trapped in the box. I think that's great. To me, when Saul started using laser beams and shit like that, I was just like, no. One of the original ideas for Spiral, which again kind of got killed as we went into pre-production, was we wanted it to be, I did not want to use the engineering idea. I wanted the traps to be more, S&M. I wanted it to be it's a younger guy doing it. I wanted it to be more BDSM and leather and not have the whole engineering thing and have it be much more simplistic. I won on some of them, not on others. But a fun thing is, if you go back and rewatch Spiral, a lot of the pieces we used came from sex stores because part of that's still maintained. So if you look at some of the connecting things and whatever, they actually come from weird sex things. Little fun fact that I slipped in there.
So this other trick you were telling me about a little earlier, you said it was like Copperfield-ish or something?
That's magic.
No, it's really bad, I promise you. It'll just make you sad.
The last one you did, you signed my one picture that you grabbed and you wrote on there, David, I fucking hate you.
Yeah, I try to bring a little cheer in every signature.
I loved it.
Thank you. I too will sign things I fucking hate you if you come to my table.
XOXO.
No. I really do though. I think the next thing, I'm so into magic that I'm working right now, and one of the things I'm excited about that I didn't realize is that a lot of these famous magicians that you see and know are not the guys that create the tricks. There's a guy behind the guy that create all the illusions, and they're just the performers. They teach it to them and they go out and perform. I'm working right now with David Blaine and Copperfield's Tick Creator on this new thing that we're doing that has a horror spin to it. There used to be something in Paris in the 20s before that called the Grand Guignol Theater, where they would basically do killings on stage, and they would use tools and tricks to do it. And people would pass out in the theater because they would not know how they were doing it. We're working on something that will do kind of that is using magic to basically make things look real in front of you, as opposed to using visual effects and special effects. And to me, there's something much more horrific about that if you're right there and you're watching it happen, as opposed to knowing that I've edited it together over months and have visual effects removing blood rigs. So we're going to do something really sick and sinister with magic as the basic base of it, to do it in real life. It is delightful. It's great.
By the way, we have someone at this convention right now, a vendor that you need to meet. He's a magician.
Oh, really?
We call him Magic Joe, and we'll bring him to you.
Don't. I mean, prepare to be underwhelmed considerably.
Well, he could perform for you because he wows us every time.
Okay, you can come wow me. I'm not going to do shit for him.
Guys can have that magic off.
No.
That could be taken very differently.
Take that as you will.
Please, though, come over and say hello. I would love to put horrible things on your pictures and talk to you at my table. The longer you wait, the drunker I will be. So you want to come sooner,
Or later.
or later. Yeah, it's,
Depending on the vibe you want, right?
Exactly. Any last questions before we take off?
Oh, was there kind of two different questions, but what was your favorite set, or is there a set that you walked in on and it just blew your mind with how much better it was than put in your head?
I mean, to me, that 100% is Repo, because we built a world. I mean, we built a cemetery and an opera stage and the Wallace household. Everything was on a soundstage on that movie, and we had. We fogged it out so it all had atmosphere, and there were flash pots of flames going, and you could drive cars through it. So it was the only time in my life that I've had a set that felt like I grew up watching Terry Gilliam and Brazil and these kind of insane world building things, and that's what I really love. If you go back and watch Repo at the Devil's Carnival, to me, that's the kind of shit that I want to make, and that's just Dick Tracy's another version of that. Where if you look at Dick Tracy, it's so specific in the way it looks, and in fact. My favorite movies that I've done, the Repo, the Devil's Carnival, use the Dick Tracy lighting scheme. Storaro, who was the DP, I use all of his gels. So to me, that was pretty awesome to be able to walk inside a universe, and it all connected the way we show it in the movie. So to me, that is probably my favorite set, because it did feel like I was walking into something that had been in my mind for years, from stage show now to reality. And there was a sense of accomplishment too, that I actually got this thing made.
It was amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, listen, I'm going to go back. Please come to my table, say hello, take a picture with the Billy doll, the real one.
What?
Yeah, it's the real Billy doll from Saw 3.
Oh.
I have stolen so many props. This is the true thing, is I have a storage unit, and every time I leave any movie, I take all the trash. So I will take everything off the walls. So before Saw 2 ended, I went and I took every poster off of Jigsaw's walls. I took every thing in Repo that I could fit. My favorite was when Saw 2 ended, I grabbed 1,000 needles out of the needle pit, and I tried to send them via FedEx, and I got a phone call from Customs saying, "Do you want to explain what these things are we're holding?" And I thought I would have learned my lesson, but this is my other favorite one. So on Spiral, I was like, I want to take the shot. Someone dies in Spiral by shotguns at the very end, and there were all these spent shotgun shells. And I was like, oh, these are going to be worth something because this iconic character died. So I grabbed the shotgun shells, and I forget about it because we shot that scene first. That was the first thing we shot in the movie. And I put it in my bag, and cut to me going across the border. And I get pulled aside kind of violently into this room. And they dumped the shotgun shells in front of me, and they said, "You want to explain these unspent shotgun shells?" And it was actually 9 of them had not been ejected properly. Even though they were fake, they still had the caps on them. And so I lost all of those. But I have a great storage unit of all the shit that I've taken, Billy being one of them, from Saw 3. Yeah, so I have the original Billy and the original Mr. Snuggles from Spiral here with me.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
It was an
I
honor.
appreciate it. I appreciate it.